The year is 1987. In the year where Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles made its TV debut, Guns N' Roses released their career-making debut album, Appetite for Destruction, and most importantly, red M&Ms were back in the marketplace after being banned for 11 years.
You even brought the red ones back.
No one was ready for Rambo to be coming to the Nintendo Entertainment System. In this video, we will go back and cover the buzz and news coverage surrounding the game and the final product to understand if the game holds up to the test of time. In 1977, at the 49th Academy Awards, Rocky was nominated for 10 Oscars, including Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay nominations for Stallone. The film went to win the Academy Awards for Best Picture, Best Directing, and Best Film Editing. In 1982, Stallone took one of his most iconic roles, John Rambo, a former Green Beret in First Blood. The film was a big hit, both critically and at the box office. Now, I could recap the movie, but honestly, if you haven't seen the Rambo films, go fix that. They are pure action gold, but let's stay focused on the game. The NES Rambo game is based on Rambo First Blood Part 2 from 1985, and it reportedly sold around 600,000 copies. It launched in Japan on December 4th, 1987, published by Pekin Video, and came to North America in May 1988 via Acclaim. Pekin Video made 12 NES games total, and they were no strangers to movie tie-ins. They also worked on Knight Rider, Die Hard, and Terminator 2. Alright, let's jump back to 1988, a time when the internet wasn't in every home, and getting information about video games meant flipping through magazines. Now, digging up those old magazines is tough, especially when they are in Japanese. Sadly, I don't speak Japanese, so I will focus on what was happening in North America. By the time the gaming press started covering Rambo, the game was already out. I managed to track down mentions of Rambo in video game magazines between 1988 and 1990. The first sign of Rambo's coverage in the US that I found was in June 1988's issue of Game Player's Nintendo Buyer's Guide. This magazine was basically the go-to for NES fans back then, packed with game showcases, hints, and cheat codes. In that issue, there were 2 adverts for Rambo, one as part of a bigger lineup of games, and another full-page ad just for Rambo. The first advert was from Lionel Kiddie City and Playworld, classic toy store from back in the day. And right at the top, front and center, you got the Rambo game box art, alongside other heavy hitters like Castlevania, Legend of Zelda, RC Pro-Am, and Jaws. Also, shout out to that chunky NES Advantage joystick and the zapper light gun in the middle. And there it is, the Rambo full page ad. Front and center, you've got Sylvester Stallone blazing away with a machine gun with the tagline, "Your body is a weapon." The ad sets the tone. You are a special weapons expert on a mission to rescue American POWs from a deadly jungle prison, armed with a lot of different weapons and what they call a never say die attitude. They also showed a few game screenshots at the bottom, so you would know what you were getting into. In the magazine's awesome section, Rambo got a big double page feature. They hyped you up as a Green Beret, weapons expert, and martial arts pro on a POW rescue mission in the Vietnamese jungle. You had all kinds of enemies, from giant spiders, man-eating fish, killer robots, and helicopters. And the scenery constantly changed from forests, caves, rivers, you named it. They also added the price tag of $34.95, In 2025's money, that's around $93. Ouch. Rambo also showed up in the very first issue of Nintendo Power in 1988 on page 82 in the video shorts section, which previewed new and upcoming games. They described it as a fast, action-packed game based on the hit movie, and the write-up recaps the story. Feel free to pause the video and appreciate it in more detail. Around the same time, Rambo also popped up in Electronic Games Player issue 3 in a feature called You're Out to Be in Pictures. The article dove into the rising trend of turning blockbuster movies like Rambo, Rocky and RoboCop into video games instead of making original stories. They pointed out two big reasons for this shift. First, action movies naturally fit video game formats. There's a lot of fighting, explosions, and clear objectives. And secondly, the instant name recognition. If you loved the movie, you would probably buy the game just to relive those moments. In the August 1988 issue of Game Player's Nintendo Buyer's Guide, Rambo showed up again in two advertisements. One was a Toys R Us ad that also featured another movie-based game, Top Gun, and the other one, a bold ad with Rambo right front and center. The magazine also included Rambo in the Hot Hit section, describing it as a jungle rescue mission where you play the legendary Green Beret. And they also teased that some enemies aren't even human. Moving into 1989, Rambo was still getting attention, showing up in at least 6 different magazines that year. One standout was in April on Video Games and Computer Entertainment issue 3. It featured a full-page Rambo advert alongside the full list of upcoming NES titles. Then in May 1989, Rambo showed up again in issue 4 of Nintendo Game and Computer Entertainment, but this time a different kind of article. It was about the booming handheld market, titled Konami Acclaim Thinking Small. The article revealed that Acclaim was planning portable LSD versions of Rambo, Werewolf and WrestleMania for $19.95 each. Meanwhile, Konami had Double Dribble, Gladius and Contra lined up for about 15, with Top Gun and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming later that year. Konami's Emil Heitkamp predicted a big handheld comeback, saying the new portable systems offered better graphics, cool effects, and arcade-style action that you could take anywhere. Also in May 1989, the very first issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly hit shelves, and Rambo scored a little spotlight on it too. Acclaim took out a full-page NES advert titled The Masters of the Game, Hot Stuff for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And the ad hyped up Acclaim's lineup as the best in arcade-style action and strategy. Fast forward to July 1989, when the second issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly dropped. No big Rambo ad this time, but it did sneak into the magazine's top secret section, courtesy of Dave Edwards. He revealed a cool bit of trivia most players didn't know. There are actually 2 endings in the NES Rambo game. In one, Rambo ally Co dies, and in the other one, she survives. Also in July 1989, over the Nintendo Power issue 7, Rambo made another appearance, this time in the classified information section. They shared what's basically a game-breaking shortcut, or maybe just a glitch. The tip lets you skip the game's toughest boss, the Flying Fortress, by glitching through a wall in the last POW cell. Nintendo Power even backed it up with screenshots of the bug in action. It was speedrunner material before speedrunning was even a thing. And to wrap up 1989, Rambo popped up one last time in issue 4 of Electronic Gaming Monthly under the top secret section. A reader from Phoenix Walter Gary, sent a bizarre glitch tip where Rambo would become invisible, and the screen would fill up with random numbers, letters, and computer gibberish. If you want to learn how to do it, pause the video and read the instructions carefully. The last time that I could find this Rambo game mentioned was at the beginning of 1990. In January, the 12th issue of Video Game and Computer Entertainment came with this article under the Easter egg section that showed this code that would give Rambo unlimited energy. In Nintendo Power issue 10, things got wild with a classified information tip from Agents 126, 208 and 128. Their mission was to reveal a password that makes Rambo nearly invisible. It's the same as the cheat code from earlier, but with way more detail. And last but not least, Electronic Gaming Monthly issue 7 gave Rambo's NES game one final shoutout under the top secret section. The tip was titled Strange Code, and it was actually just a recycled cheat from their 1989 issue, so nothing new to see. And just like that, Rambo quietly exited the gaming spotlight. Would a kid buy this game with all this media? I think they would be inclined to do so. In the 80s, kids loved their superheroes in movies like Rambo or The Terminator, for example. So I believe the movies, plus this media and advertising, would make a kid excited for the game. So then, how was this game? Back in Video had already made a Rambo and Super Rambo special for the MSX in 1985 and 1986 respectively. And although the games are very different, they used their previous knowledge of the franchise to produce their first video game on the NES. This is a game that seems to always had a lot of criticism, but looking back into it, I think the game was just too ambitious for its time. This is one of the licensed titles for the NES that wanted to be more than the typical platformer or action game. In all honesty, they really didn't succeed at it, but they seem to really have tried. Alright, so here's the deal with this game. You're not exactly out there battling communists non-stop like in the movie. Instead, most of the time you're spending dealing with animals, bugs, and just straight up weird creatures. Oh, and don't expect to be running around guns blazing either. Firearms are super rare, so you just gotta get creative with how you handle threats. Now, a lot of these strange design choices can be tracked back to back in Video trying to ride the wave of the NES trend at the time. I mean, this isn't their first rodeo when it comes to following trends. Take the MSX Rambo games, for example. They basically modded them after the hit MSX game Headlight. They even went so far as to copy the bricks design and overall style of that game. It's pretty wild when you think about it. Side-scrolling games were huge on the NES, and that's basically why they took this approach for Rambo. Even Nintendo jumped on the side-scrolling bandwagon. They completely reworked the sequel of the iconic The Legends of Zelda, turning it from an action RPG into a side-scrolling adventure with Zelda II: The Adventure of Link. And when you compare Rambo to Zelda II side by side, it's crystal clear. Rambo on the NES is basically a Zelda 2 clone. But here's the thing, Rambo actually hit the US first, about 8 months before Zelda 2. However, Zelda 2 had already been out in Japan almost 11 months before Rambo. Back then, that was more than enough time to program and release a full 8-bit game. In this game, you can collect all kinds of weapons. Throwing knives, exploding arrows, assault rifles, and grenades.
Nice.
It sounds awesome, right? But here's the kicker, your main weapon is your trusty knife. And let me tell you, that knife is seriously frustrating. The attack range is ridiculously short, and combined with the input delay this game seems to have, you'll find yourself smashing the attack button way earlier than it seems natural just to hit the enemies in time. It took me forever to adjust to that delay, and even after getting used to it, being accurate with the attacks is still a challenge. The short range becomes even more of a problem when you're dealing with tough enemies, since you usually end up taking damage in the process. So what do? You're basically forced to grind specific enemies that drop other weapons until your ammo is fully stocked. It's not exactly the most thrilling gameplay loop, if you ask me. And what's that? You see those floating numbers that shows when the enemy goes to the afterlife? Those are experience points that let you level up. Once you accumulate enough of them, that will increase Rambo's attack power. That just means that the enemy takes less hits to kill, although the annoying short range of the Rambo attack stays the same. And when you kill a boss, you get a heart that makes Rambo health increase, the typical thing that games from that era were doing. One of the game's biggest flaws is a lack of a world map, or any other way to figure out where you actually are. Navigation is a nightmare. You move left and right, which basically translates to east and west, and then every so often you'll come across these blocks marked S or N, representing north and south. Stepping on one transports you to a different part of the world, but unless you got a photographic memory, you're going to be lost, and fast. And to make matters worse, sometimes when you step onto one of these S or N blocks, the return block doesn't exist where you came out on the other side. That just makes everything feel even more confusing. Combine this frustrating backtracking with the annoying attack delay on your knife, and yeah, it pretty much sucks the joy right out of the game. When it comes to the story, Back in Video actually added some narrative elements that loosely follow the movie's plot. You'll come across these story beats while exploring villages or camps, and talking to NPCs is essential if you want to figure out what to do next. The problem is, progressing the game often depends on triggering specific events at just the right time, and with the game's confusing layout, like I stated before, it's a challenge to know what you're supposed to do and when. Also, some part of the story feels disconnected or poorly explained, making certain moments pretty confusing. Like for example, when the captain of the boat tries to betray Rambo, it only makes sense if you have already seen the movie. Back in Video also tried to add a sense of freedom and player choice in some parts of the game, but honestly, most of it doesn't amount to much. For example, at the very start of the game, they give you the option to stay in prison or leave, but you have to leave to progress, so why even pretend to have a choice? Now, that being said, and spoiler alert, there is one interesting twist that separates the game from the movie. As mentioned in one of the magazines that we covered before, in the game, Ko doesn't have to die. You can actually save her. If you ignore her injuries at the waterfall and never confirm her death, Ko survives, which honestly makes you wonder why Rambo didn't try that in the movie. What's even cooler is that later in the game, Ko becomes an actual playable character. This happens when Rambo gets captured by the Soviets, and while Ko doesn't do any combat, it forces you to progress the story as someone other than the main character. And that was a pretty innovating mechanic at the time, especially on the NES. To finish, Rambo's portrait graphic looks very bad.
No, God!
I completely understand that's very hard to have detailed faces with that pixel art, but Rambo looks like Rocky after being beaten up in the first movie. You can see in these examples of Ko, Erickson, Murdoch, and Troutman that they look pretty much exactly in the pixel art like they do in real life, but this is the best I can do with Rambo. Even the goofiest face that I could find doesn't really match the goofiness of this pixel art. Finally, we have the music. I think it's generally good, especially the title screen and the music in the Vietnam sections that I've tried to make a cover for this gameplay part of the video. If you have a chance, at least give the music track a try. Overall, I think the game isn't that great. They had some fun ideas, like giving the player a feeling of choice and introducing a secondary controllable character, but the awful knife attack delay combined with the confusing world navigation killed the joy of the game for me. So what did you think of this game? If you have never played it, are you thinking about trying it? Let us know in the comments below. Also, please tell me what you think of this format. I want to make these going back in time and look at old media videos fun and engaging. So all constructive feedback is appreciated. And that's all from me. If you enjoyed the video, please help me by liking and sharing it. Goodbye.